Hey, how's it going, guys? All right, so this is the sheath slash scabbard build for the fantasy sword that I made for the YouTube Knifemaker challenge. Here I am in CAD, just drawing up the shape of the sheath. Went ahead and drew out the dragon pin, took a picture of the pins that I ordered, and then drew it up in CAD, basically traced it out after taking a photograph of it. Here I am, once I have it kind of laid out, that middle line right there is essentially my cutoff line for the leather that I can fit in the Glowforge. Some little bits that I added there, just some accents. These are little guys to hold on some D-rings, and we got my logo in there as well. Right below those little D-rings are some straps to hold it essentially around your belt. So here's that middle line I was talking about. Essentially, the Glowforge can cut up to a certain size. Here we are in Adobe Illustrator. Went ahead and took my CAD files, exported those out, imported them to Illustrator. Made a little dragon scale design there. Thought that might be kind of cool for, you know, the accent piece. But went ahead and popped in all the rivet holes and all the stitching holes. And there's those two straps and those little D-ring pieces. And there's the stitching holes themselves. Now the different colors for everything is essentially how the Glowforge gets assigned, you know, different cuts. And there's the first sheet that I got nested all out. And essentially that's the perimeter of the leather that can fit in there. And the second sheet. But essentially the different colors for the holes, the perimeter, the logos are to tell the Glowforge what to etch, what to cut, what to scribe. And this first cut here is actual speed. I have not sped the video up yet, just kind of show how fast it is. But I will essentially make my first cut be a small cut or a test piece, just to make sure that, you know, it's cutting fine, there's not any problems or anything like that. But 99.9% of the time, this Glowforge is on it. A lot of the times it's variations in the leather thickness, where maybe a couple holes won't be all the way through, or the profile of something won't be cut completely, but again, that's very few and far between. So here it is all sped up. I think it's maybe 4,000 or 5,000% sped up. If it cut this quick, that would be amazing. But still, these cuts are not too long. I think each one's maybe about 4 or 5 minutes total. And as I cut, I'll take the parts out, put some tape down just in case the leather, you know, warps, you know, with all the cutting or all the heat, anything like that. Like I said in the last video, I've been programming, you know, industrial lasers and water jets for years. It's something that happens even with metal. A lot of heat generated will make the metal warp. So it's good to, after a little bit, you know, especially with something pliable like leather, to take a few of them out, you know, and make sure the material's not moving. Now here's the first of the accent pieces that I'm doing, and I have the logos as an etch as well as the dragon scale. The dragon scale for some reason was maybe too thin, but it didn't like to be assigned as an etch. So I went ahead and changed that layer to a scribe, and I left the logos as etch layers. And as a scribe, it's just zooming through all those little tiny dragon scale bits, and they're coming out real nice. And there we go with the dragon logo and the perimeter. And went ahead and took that piece out, make sure everything looked good, and it looked great. You know, the scribe setting scares me, especially with leather, because it's like, I don't want it to go too deep and cut all the way through, but again, the Glowforge, it's preset material. That little square over to the right with the barcode on it that I keep moving around, that is essentially what tells the Glowforge, you know, what settings to use for what materials in there. After my first few pieces of leather that I cut with the Glowforge, that sticker that comes on every single piece of leather that you buy from Glowforge gets cut up. And if that sticker gets cut up mid-cut, or even if you have to realign and that sticker is no longer in its entirety, it won't read the material. So I kind of got a little smart and took the sticker off and basically have it to where I can just move it around, you know, around my cuts, and keep it in a spot where it will keep reading no matter what's cut out of the material. And there's that replacement piece that I first cut out that I etched and didn't come out too good. And there we go. And whenever the Glowforge cuts a material, whether it be acrylic or wood or leather, that needs a piece of basically like masking tape on the material, and it comes like that when you order it from Glowforge. It basically takes the grunt of all the burns, so essentially all that looks burnt is really just masking tape. Usually it takes a long time to take the tape off, but with a little bit of Windex and a paper towel, it just pops right off. Realistically though, it's not too bad to take off, especially the large pieces. The masking tape just peels off. These dragon scale bits, every single tiny dragon scale, I had to take off a piece of masking tape, which took forever. But it was worth it. Everything came out really great. Here I go with some dye. I can't remember how to pronounce it. I think it's Fibblings is essentially the maker of the dye. And I believe I'm using mahogany. It in itself is a really vibrant color, but on your second coat of straight mahogany, the leather goes almost black with like a brown tint. So basically what I did is I take that little glass right there, and I put quite a bit of rubbing alcohol in there and a little bit of dye, and I kind of work my way up till I get a good color that I like. I did know that I wanted the accent pieces to be a different shade. I wasn't sure if I wanted them to be darker and the sheath itself to be lighter, but I really dug how dark the sheath was coming out, so I essentially just kept doing quite a few more coats on the sheath, and I let the straps and the accent pieces to dry. And there we go. There we go, mahogany. But essentially I did the rest of the darkening of the sheath to save time. But I kind of dug that two-tone color. And here's those D-ring pieces, making sure they fit up just fine. And then I've got these clips I wanted to use for the belt straps. So essentially the belt will go through the other end, and this would be what holds it on to the D-rings. Boop, kind of like that. And to the side of the sheath. Alright, so at this point I'm using some leather conditioner. Essentially once I get done with the Glowforge and I get done with the staining of the leather, I really want to hit it with as much conditioner as I can, because that Glowforge, it does, like I said, a great job, but where it cuts or where it etches or scribes, it really burns. It really burns pretty bad. It's almost like a potato chip. Not enough to be brittle or anything like that, but you can definitely tell it's pretty charred, which, you know, isn't a problem. Just condition the leather, make sure everything's nice and saturated. And there we go. Let that sit for a little bit. And then it's time to glue everything up. So it's just leather cement, basically, just leather glue. And I got a little pile of like miniature nails. I'm not even sure what to call them. They're not necessarily brad nails or anything like that. If you've put together anything from IKEA or a bookcase or anything like that, it's the little tiny nails that, you know, they have to like hammer the back piece on. It's a little pack that I got from Home Depot back when I first started doing the leather, and they're like the perfect size for the stitching holes. Alright, and here we go. These needles, this brand right here, is an excellent brand. The thread itself, Ritza Tiger thread, great thread. The needles themselves, I think it comes in a pack of 25. I've had none of them break on me. They will last forever. The Ritza Tiger thread is a really good thread. When I first started, I was using some off-brands from Amazon, same as the needles, and the Amazon needles broke, and the thread snapped. And you know, when I first started out, I got really panicked because I wasn't sure, like, am I doing something wrong? And essentially, it was just not using quality material. And that little loop that I showed there, that's essentially how I start all the stitches that I do. It basically sets each of the two needles to the thread. And any, you know, standard saddle stitching is what, you know, most YouTube video tutorials will show you, and that's essentially what I run with on all the sheaths, just saddle stitch back and forth, back and forth. This first one I was going slow just to kind of give a semi walkthrough on how it goes. And with these pieces, they're so small, when you basically end the thread or end your stitch, you want to backstitch a couple. And on these, since they're so small, I backstitched, I think, all the way back a second time. You know, I do know they'll be holding a lot of weight, so it's kind of my justification for, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and backstitch quite a bit just in case. You know, they will be held on those other two larger holes. Will have grommets ran through them, so they'll definitely be secure. And just burning the ends, tampering them down, and that piece is done for now. And I'm pretty sure, yeah, we hit turbo mode at this point. Just stitching the rest of them. You know, I've done a few pieces. There's a few videos on YouTube here on my channel of wire wrapping that I've done, you know, on some pendants, on some jewelry, and it's pretty tedious work. I will say that leather stitching by hand is akin to that, if not a little more tedious, depending on how complex, you know, the piece is. But this is a really good time to just put on some music and kind of get in the zone. There I was using a couple needles just to make sure when I clamp down, you know, everything holds tight. I'm sure if there's any leather workers watching the video, I'd probably need a stitching pony, I agree. But I have this little Dremel clamp that like rotates 360 degrees, and it's worked great for me so far. I haven't seen a lot of stitching ponies that, you know, rotate in all kinds of directions. But, you know, if I come across one, I'll probably pick one up. But for now, you know, this is working great. But again, you know, stitching by hand, tedious work, but, you know, really relaxing. Just get in the zone, listen to some tunes. Kind of just really get deep in your thoughts. Let's see, just finishing up that other piece for the belt strap. You know, for the fantasy build, I had never done, you know, a sword the way I did, you know, that current sword. You know, copper and brass inlay, you know, into each other, let alone the sword design itself. You know, the grinds on it were all new to me, and you know, when it came to the sheath, I knew it was like, let's pull all the stops out. I had mentioned it before, I've done probably 100 sheaths in the last 5 or 6 months for my buddy Matt with Magnum Works Knives. He is crazy good at making knives and weapons and all that kind of stuff, and he needed someone to basically, you know, continue doing his leather. He's working with a company now, but he and I talked about, you know, if I was gonna get a Glowforge, he's like, oh dude, that'd be sweet, you can do my sheaths. And you know, it's really good experience to have, but having done so many of his sheaths, you know, stitching and all that, as well as the layout in CAD and Adobe Illustrator, it was definitely a good pocket of knowledge to have to do something this large, you know, with this many complex pieces, you know, including all the rivets and the accent pieces, things like that. You know, a lot of the knives that he has me do the leather for, they're either you know, pancake style or taco style, where essentially you just fold the leather over the knife and stitch one way. The pancake style would be basically, you know, like I'm doing here, two pieces, one on each side, sandwiching around the blade itself. But yeah, no, it's really fun to do, and if only I could do it this fast, I would probably be a lot happier. And there we go with that top part and the middle. Yeah, I had a lot of fun, you know, with the build, not just the sword and the sheath, but you know, everything all together. You know, trying to compile all the things that I learned as far as metal working goes, leather working, things like that. I know in the last video I talked about the mosaic pin. Having never done one of those, it was fun to have that boundary pushed. It's not a lot that I get into a build and have something I'm really nervous about. But it's a fun kind of stress, because once you get to that point, it's like, all right, well, either it's gonna go good or it's gonna go bad, but either way, it's got to get done. So yeah, and luckily, you know, every now and then when you saddle stitch by hand, you might catch the thread going through one hole, coming out the other, and it basically ties to itself. And that's every now and then that'll happen. And luckily, I'm so lucky that did not happen on this session at all. Because that's always frustrating, trying to like get the thread back out through the same hole when it's tied to the other half of the other thread. Alright, so let's get these tops done. We go and sandwich them together and make them one. When I oh, there we go, there's something to talk about. I underestimated the amount of thread for the first time on this build. And you know, when I first started and that happened, I freaked out, wasn't sure what to do. But essentially, you know, again, YouTube, a lot of great people out there showing insight. You basically just rethread your needles, go back a couple stitches, go back over where you were, and just keep on continuing past, and everything everything holds itself in, which makes sense. But you know, I was, you know, first time when that happened, it was like, oh no, do I need to unthread all the sewing that I just did? But no, having that happen, it at this point, it's not too big of a problem. A good way to estimate your thread, basically take whatever distance that you're going to be sewing, times that by 5 or 6, depending on how thick your leather is. I think I times it by 6.5 or 7 on this build, just in case. Rather have extra than not enough, especially on these long ones. But here we go, starting sewing everything together in the two halves. And the back side. Yeah, I was somewhere at this point where I was starting to think, well, you know, hopefully I left enough room for the blade to be able to fit. Usually wet pressing is a way that I go if it's a little too tight of a fit. I have yet to have anything be too loose of a fit. But yeah, it was definitely running through my head at this point, because it's like, well, once they're stitched together, there's no going back unless I want to pop every single thread out. But laying out where I start these stitches, I knew I wanted to come to that center point, because the center point is where underneath those accents, if you remember where that seam is, where the leather was too short for the Glowforge to cut completely. I knew I wanted to start at the opposite end and then end at that middle section. That way I could come back and do my back stitching right there over that seam. So essentially it's been back stitched on the first half and then the second half on its way back. And then here we go with that last stretch. And again, if I could sew by hand this fast, oof, that would be awesome. Oh, turbo mode for sure. Oh yeah, and the gloves I didn't even mention started wearing. Hand stitching definitely does a number when you're cinching every single time to your hands. So those gloves are just leather sewing gloves. There she is, all done. And luckily, at this point, I can grab my glue and glue up these little bits. I don't think I recorded it. I couldn't find the footage. Essentially, the really thin bits right there, the flaps, I sanded down with a Dremel just so that my rivets would work. And again, postman delivers something, ends up way over here. Happens all the time. But no, there's the sword in progress. Oh, butter knife, tactical butter knife. Alright, knifekits.com. Like I said before in some of my sheath builds, it's a great company to order Kydex from. And yeah, they're a great source for eyelets as well. I went ahead and ordered brass just because I thought the color scheme would go great, you know, with the brass on the sword. But as I was saying, those accent pieces, the little flappy bits, I sanded down with a sanding drum on the Dremel, just to get them thin enough. wow, how many times could I say the eyelets are only so long, and they're definitely made for kydex, you know, thickness of kydex, not this much thickness of leather. So basically I just sanded down those flappy bits so the eyelets would work. This is a press right here I'm using. Matt with Magnum Works actually got me that because I was setting all my eyelets prior to by hand, which, you know, it's doable, just not efficient. And here it is, all done. Last thing to do is to assemble all the belt parts. So this is a kit that I got off Amazon. It was pretty affordable, and it came with the original eyelet setter that I had been using prior to getting that press. I'm just getting some washers out, and this is that eyelet setter that I was using. Basically, you hammer it on the top, put the eyelet underneath, and it crimps it down. It works great. It's definitely affordable, just not the fastest way of doing things. So here's some standoffs that are in that kit that go with, you know, any kydex sheath build. The washers go on there, keep everything nice and quiet, as well as keep everything from rubbing against each other. But essentially, it's you know, female posts that stand off and kind of showing that, you know, it can be adjusted between any of them. I have 3/4 inch spacing between all the eyelets. So the female end, the post that sticks through, basically have a screw on the front that's threaded, and it threads right in, screws right down, holds everything nice and tight, and drop the screwdriver. That's Butterfingers for you. At this point, I was getting really excited to get this done, try it out, see how it works. Alright, just attaching those. There we go. And time for a test fit. This was after I had blackened all the bits on the sword. This was that night. Went ahead and sanded everything down and given it the first test. It was going nice and slow just to make sure it didn't tear anything if it was too tight, and it fits great. And that little lock right there, I was not anticipating. I had a slight undercut in that little accent piece up top in the leather, and it could have been pretty detrimental, but it actually fits in and locks the sword in place. Doesn't let it rattle at all or anything, and it's not too loose, not too tight. It's just right. So at this point, time to burnish the edges. A lot of people use different materials, different things. I use a big brick of natural beeswax. It works good for me. It's what I like. Everyone's got the preference, like I said. I even have some edge finish that I use on my first cleaver that I built. It was quite a few years ago. I actually cut the leather by hand, but I use it's a flexible edge finish that you put. Basically, you paint on around the edge of the leather, and it hardens. It hardens enough to protect it, but it is flexible. I think it's acrylic based, so it won't separate off the leather, but it flexes real nice. But yeah, I just got a piece of walnut chucked up in the wood lathe. Been using this on all the sheaths that I do, as far as burnishing goes. A nice speedy way to get it done. I know a lot of people do it by hand. I'm not sure if I have the patience to do that. Alright, and here's that test video. Just showing off the sheath, showing off the sword. Kind of how it wears around the belt. But yeah, again, this was a really fun build. Pushed in a lot of boundaries to you know, all the knowledge that I've collected over the years. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I you know, I know it's something I came up with, so I might be privy to liking my own design, but I thought it came out kind of cool, you know, especially for something fantasy. Kind of like a king sword from Middle Earth or something. But anyway, I hope you guys dig it. You know, I had fun doing it. Oh, it slides in so nice. But yeah, I appreciate you guys watching. Appreciate any feedback, and thank you so much. I'll go ahead and leave you guys off with a little video and picture montage.